Great. Thanks very much. Welcome, everybody. This is our second out-of-term meeting, and we're just grateful for you coming. I know we're out of term, but it's wonderful that we have a nice audience. It's a pleasure to introduce Dr. Ghassan Issa, who's from the American University of Beirut Medical Center, and he runs the Arab Early Child Development Network. Ghassan is a pediatrician who has played a major role in a large amount of early child development work and research across the entire Arab region, but also across a large span of low middle income countries. Ghassan will tell you about about the whole situation in the northern Syrian area in relation to the earthquake. But we wanted to have Ghassan now because we felt, things just get forgotten, and it's just very important to try and highlight some of these issues. It's already late in the day about what's happened in northern Syria and all the complexities, the political complexity which have interfered with the humanitarian response. Ever since I've known Ghassan, he's been involved in crises. The first one, there was COVID, which hit Beirut as it hit many other places, but also complicated by many other political issues as it did elsewhere. And then not long into the lockdown, they had this massive and horrendous explosion which destroyed large parts of Beirut just around the port area, but rocked and damaged buildings everywhere, including Ghassan's residence and your headquarters. And I remember you describing literally flying walls and traveling through space around Beirut. And then there was many other things have happened, and now we've had this tragedy. So we're very keen to have you, Ghassan. You've been a long-standing friend and an enormous promoter of all this work, and you're never stinting in what he has to do and the risks he takes personally. It's an absolute pleasure to have you today.
Thank you, Ellen and friends, for giving me this opportunity to talk about children and families in crisis in the Arab countries, and where the earthquake is one crisis over and above lots of other crises. I will talk slowly because my British accent is not up to this. And I'll expect the same when you ask. Yeah, well. Okay. Okay. Just before a quick look on the Arab network for early childhood itself, we are a flexible network that includes a diverse, multi-sectoral and multidisciplinary group of representatives from ministries of education, health and social affairs, childhood councils, NGOs, academics, and as well as individual experts from at least 10 Arab countries up till now. I say at least because sometimes we miss and we don't have these connections with representatives from Arab countries due to security situation. For instance, from Libya, from Somalia. Sometimes you have these connections and sometimes not. And here I should say that we don't have offices in these countries. We have partners. And we work with partners of ANECD in these countries. Our vision is children enjoying their rights, happiness, and well-being in an enriching environment of freedom, justice, and equity. Very far, but it is a vision. And our mission is to connect, empower, align, advocate, produce, and deliver through effective networking, I would say. We have our 5 areas of strategic areas of interventions, and they are all embedded in the child's rights. We work with emergencies and crises, the early childhood workforce, climate crisis and digital empowerment, and social and cybersecurity. And we work through 3 cross-strategic working tools: the knowledge production, the advocacy and communication and partnerships and influencing policies cross-cutting the strategic interventions that we talked about. Now, if you want to start, let's say that in Arab countries, it's the same all over the world, which is being affected by the determinants of early childhood development and care. And here are a list of some of the Arab countries that are affected by these before any of the acute crises happen. These are the chronic things that we face. Poverty, political instability, inequity, economic crises, sexism, and over and above, we got the 3 C's that hit during the last few years. Let's say conflicts with all its results of refugees, internally displaced, victims, affecting development of children, everything. The climate crisis that you know much better about it, and the COVID-19. These 3 came over and above the chronic issues that we talked about. For instance, in one of the UNICEF reports, that is from 2005 until 2020, 82% of all verified child casualties due to violence occurred in only 5 countries in the world. 4 of them are Arab countries, 4 of the 5, which are Palestine, of course, Syria, Yemen, and Somalia, in addition, of course, to Afghanistan. This left the Arab countries in different crises. In Syria, for instance, 12 years of ongoing conflict, millions of refugee children and families, economic crisis, destructed infrastructure, poor health, insecurity. In Palestine, 75 years of occupation and apartheid, millions killed, and here I'm talking about children and families. Lebanon, the Beirut blast, for instance, that Alan talked about, the economic crisis that we are having during the past few years and led to the depreciation of the local currency by 98% now, and the migration, the refugees. 1/3 of the population in Lebanon are Syrian refugees, 1/3. And then when some of the European countries talk about 3 or 300 or 4,000, I said, what are you talking about? And in Yemen, for instance, 8 years of ongoing conflict, 19 million suffering from food insecurity, 19 million, and 4 million displaced people. In Somalia and Sudan, the same. In Somalia and Sudan. Well, in 2002, the Arab Network conducted a survey on the status of parents and caregivers during crisis in 6 Arab countries, and taking the COVID lockdown as a case study. But it was about crisis in general. 3,645 questionnaires were filled by participants from Lebanon, Palestine, Jordan, Egypt, Tunisia, and Morocco. Although Syria was not here, but it was included as Syrian refugees, and in particular in Jordan and Lebanon. The questionnaire included 35 questions distributed over 11 themes related to children from birth to 5 years. And we consulted Linda about the questionnaire, and we agreed on it. Parents, and during the pandemic period, the themes of the study were nutrition, health follow-up, screen time for entertainment, screen time for distant learning, mental health, parents' mental health, challenges that faced parents during the crisis, in this case, the COVID, families' life conditions, ways to prevent the COVID, and the family support itself. The alarming results that we got from this survey was that refugees from Syria in Jordan and Lebanon, and it was a very prominent result, Syrian refugees are the groups that are most vulnerable and affected by the risk of crises, especially in terms of food insecurity and maternal destitution. And here I'm talking about before the earthquake. Before the earthquake. Now, there were nutritional needs, of course, and nutritional and maternal needs emerged as a priority, followed by needs related to health and education. And then the mental health, and you know much better than I do in this, and all sorts of mental health and psychological problems, you name it, and you'll have it. And one thing which is important is that it started before what we know academically that it will start. For instance, the PTSDs, we have early PTSDs, something like that. And of course, the education, the whole educational system was destroyed, especially, let's say now we'll see in Syria and Northwest Syria, in North Syria and Northwest Syria. And what's very important about the recommendations that we got is the need for preparedness for these things, which didn't happen anyway. And the refugees need the basic living needs, psychological support, the national strategy, national ANECD strategies is very important, and the laws related to child's rights and children, books and play. We didn't see much of that in our. Now, under these circumstances and determinants, let's go to Syria. And after 12 years of conflict, children in Syria endure one brutal crisis after another. And children had endured hardships of years, including conflict, malnutrition, stunting, public health crises, forced displacement, eventually natural disasters, as we will see. And this is the map of Syria after the 12 years of conflict, political division in Syria itself, where the pink is the area of Syria controlled by the government, the green one and some white is the opposition, mainly the Islamic opposition, I would say, and it is controlled by Turkey, if you want, and then the rest are the Kurdish part. This is the division that we got politically after 12 years of conflict. Now, when the earthquake struck, a tragedy without borders, that is, the earthquake didn't abide by the geographical borders that we know. And definitely it struck mainly Turkey, as you can see here. This is Turkey. Here it struck the northwest Syria, the opposition part, and then this part is the part of the government itself. That is Latakia. We didn't know that Latakia was struck by the earthquake during the first day, for instance. I was telling Alan now that I have a friend there. He is a physician and he is responsible for the work of the Ghassan network there. And he was in Latakia and he didn't know until the next day that 200 buildings were destroyed in Latakia. Also, of course, he survived, but he didn't know at that time. And he started discovering what's going on in Latakia and Aleppo and its surroundings. These are the part of Syria, and the blue part here is the part that was affected from the northwest Syria, of the opposition. Now, the international response missed in this case the 72-hour survival window in Syria and northwest Syria. and this is the point. The aftermath of the disastrous earthquake revealed double standards in the relief process of the affected children and families, as limited aid and rescue teams got into Syria, especially during the first 3 days survival window, because of this political problems that we have. Moreover, and despite the start of limited aid flow, then it was too late to save thousands trapped under the rubble. And it was a limited flow in this case. These relief services were still insufficient to cover the needs of children and families in the affected areas of Syria, the whole of Syria in this case. I will give, for instance, one example. At that time, 100 countries pledged help for Turkey, whereas only 35 countries pledged help for Syria. And among these 35 were something like Venezuela, Iran, which themselves, they need help. This sort of. Only, for instance, at that time, after 10 days of the earthquake, only 142 UN aid trucks reached northwest Syria, northwest, which is far controlled by Turkey. And it was not clear the amount and type of aid reached the rest of the affected areas of Syria controlled by the government. After 10 days, these are the numbers that we have. 35,000 dead in Turkey, which is the main casualties were in Turkey itself, definitely. 2 million were displaced, 6,400 collapsed buildings, and 50,000 affected buildings, and requires demolition, destruction. We had the same type of casualties in the Syria and the northwest Syria with definitely less numbers, but it was there. It was there, as you can see. Now, what arising urgent needs from the intervention, here, in the coming weeks after the earthquakes, and even years after that, we will witness an ever-increasing need to help affected families and children at all levels. And we will, nutrition and food security and families suffering in meeting their basic food needs is the first thing to think of, in addition to shelters, because they were out of their houses in freezing conditions at that time. Now, I want you to remember what did we get when dealing with the crisis before the earthquake. It's almost the same, but higher magnitude of nutrition, water, for instance, difficulty accessing water for drinking due to damage of water structures. Medicine and medical equipments were almost disappeared. Healthcare, cholera outbreaks, bacteria infection, everything you can have in such cases, for instance. And housing and shelters, of course. Education, the whole system was, for instance, 60% of the schools in northwest Syria were destroyed by the earthquake, and the 40% were used for sheltering, protection and psychosocial protection, because we started seeing cases of abduction and trafficking and all things there. And psychosocial support, and this was very early, even needed very early. We thought that response phases of response will be in three phases. First, the primary response, continue searching for the victims, and this needed equipment, rescue teams, and fuel for these equipments, and this was not available in Syria. Essential needs, as you have said, water, food, medical, everything that we talked about. And the secondary response was continue with the primary, looking for, between parentheses, survivals, or even bodies here, to say. The infrastructure, education, psychosocial support, early childhood support, and the holistic approach to health, which is important. So here is a place where you cannot address needs without this holistic approach to health, to development, I would say, care and development. We'll talk about it in a minute. And then the tertiary response will be planning to return to normal life, which is, this is almost a dream now. For instance, you need, for instance, it's known that the cost of rebuilding Turkey and Syria is something like $100 billion. And yesterday, the contributors, the donors, agreed to support Turkey and Syria by $7 billion out of the 100, and 700 million only for Syria. These are the most recent updates about the numbers that we have. We ended up with something like 45,000 deaths in Turkey and 7,000 deaths in Syria in the two areas. But let me say here that out of the 45,000 deaths in Syria, in Turkey, 4,000 were Syrian refugees, and they were transferred back to be buried in their home. 4,000. Okay. Now, one thing we forget in this vicious circle of crises in Arab countries, that every time we as Alan was saying, that we have been living crisis all over. Every time we go into the pathway of survive, thrive, and develop, something happens, and we'll go back to square one. Survival. It's something like the ladder and snake game, where every time you go up, and then something will happen, and you go down and start again. And this is not reflected in the literature in anything related to early childhood care and development. Here I would say that in these circumstances, the holistic integrated approach to early childhood care and development is mandatory, is the way. You can't go and address these things into a unisectoral approach. It should be a multisectoral, multidisciplinary. Everything is needed together yesterday rather than today. Here you can recognize the circles, and it is a one interactive process. Here you can recognize the circles that the WHO and United Nations likes to put, which is the nursery care framework, the SDGs. And what is important, I think, here is that when you talk about the SDGs, many will go into the details of the SDGs. That is, most of the academics will emphasize the SDG 4.2 and then the goal 4.2.1 something. And we already had this exercise that all of the SDGs include early childhood care and development, and how to address that rather than taking only education on. And the other thing, again, which is being forgotten when we talk about the SDGs, is the end goal. That is the sustainable development, the 5 Ps. That is the planet, the people, the prosperity, the peace, and the partnerships. Again, this is being forgotten when we talk about the SDGs. Here you can say that we have one circle, which is not a WHO one. This is our version of our version, that is the Arab Network's version of the nurturing care framework, where we have this holistic and integrated approach to childcare and development. And it is the incubator in this case is the positive responsive parenting, and inside you will see the safety and security, the early learning, and the 3 sections of a healthy living and the healthy living. This is what we call the Health, Early Learning and Protection Parenting Program, HEPPP. And we have been piloting and implementing this in different Arab countries for something like 10 or 11 years now, and improving it over the. Now, the HEPPP, for instance, a face-to-face program, this is what we are presenting, or our contribution to refugees and the host communities, which are not better than the refugees anyway in this case. The face-to-face program consists of 16 positive responsive parenting sessions with 5 psychosocial support sessions. Now, when the lockdown was there, we started digitizing the whole course, and it is now online. And I'll talk about it now. And we started adding sessions where you can tailor your intervention according to the target group. And we are now adding 6 child mental health sessions. And mental health for caregivers, definitely, it's an important part. It's an important part. The online self-taught digitized course is less costly, of course. Accessibility for parents whenever they are located, or even if they move from one place to another. More flexible in the way that fits the different circumstances and parents. What's important about this digital course, which is online, and it is that fathers are much more involved in this case, because they have the time to reach the course whenever they want, rather than depending on their working time, And it is very, very interesting for the fathers. And definitely from the start, from 2012, when we started the HEPPP, we recruited parents, that is father and mothers together, not only mothers, as it was known, or the practice. And it gives definitely flexibility for the fathers to attend. We have done lots of research on that HEPPP, and it is published. In 2020, we had a pilot intervention, which was the pilot intervention was published, the results, and now the last intervention that we did, this combination hybrid of face-to-face and online, is will be published with Virginia University in a book, in a compendium. Now we are having a research of 400 refugee families in Lebanon, trying to compare this hybrid versus face-to-face, to see which is better. And in Jordan, our partners, the Plan International, look into the male engagement itself and play in this HEPPP course. This is a, sorry, okay. This is a parenting and caregiving hub that we started according to the results that we got. And it is called Urjuha in Arabic. It is the swing in English. And it supports parents themselves. What do they want? What do they need? And the whole digitized course now is on this hub for parents to register and take it on their own. But when they register, a mentor from our side will start following up with them. A mentor. What's this? Oh, 20 experts, yes, are working on this. And we have more than 100 videos on childcare and development, 600 articles by the end of 2023, and 200 infographics on this website. Now, as I talked about the survey that we started with the crisis, now we are doing another survey about the early childhood workforce in 6 Arab countries in the same way. And until now, we have something like 9,000 filled questionnaires from the 6 Arab countries. And accordingly, we will build up a mental health hub and psychosocial support hub for the frontliners. This is the website itself. We can put you on the mailing list for our newsletter if you want. And thank you so much. I hope I was able to make you feel the pulse of what's going on in our area.
You certainly did. Thanks very much, Ghassan.